All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're decoding the business model canvas. If you've ever felt like trying to understand a business is basically putting together a thousand-piece puzzle without the box cover, well, this is the tool you need. It's a strategic framework that lets you visualize, design, or completely pivot an entire business's logic, and you literally do it all on a single page. It just strips away the noise. We're looking purely at the essential architecture of how value is created and delivered.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a quick intro to the canvas, move into the show, which is the customer-facing side, cover the value proposition, dive into the factory behind the scenes, and wrap up with the wallet, the financials.
Part 1, Intro to the Canvas.
Okay, so this blueprint illustrates the entire 9-block framework, and it moves super logically. Over on the far left, you've got your key partners and back-end operations. Then on the far right, you'll see your customer segments. Sitting right smack in the middle is the value proposition, kind of acting like the glue holding it all together. And the whole thing rests firmly on the foundational blocks of your cost structure and revenue streams down at the bottom.
Let's move into our first major category, focusing on that right side of the canvas. We like to call this the show. This encompasses literally everything your customer actively sees, feels, and experiences.
Part 2, The Show, the customer-facing operations. Here, we're unpacking exactly who we're serving because, let's be real, customers are absolutely not a monolith. In a B2C, business-to-consumer model, we usually segment the market into demographic categories. Things like age, income, education, but we can't just stop there. We also look at psychographic variables. These are those intrinsic traits, personality, lifestyle, political views, and finally, behavioral segmentation, which honestly is arguably the most powerful. This looks at loyalty status, how often they use the product, and what specific benefits they're actually hunting for.
Now, here is a massive trap so many businesses fall into. You have to distinguish between the user and the customer. The person interacting with your product isn't always the one actually opening their wallet. Take toys, for example. The user is obviously the child, but the customer, that's the parent. Or think about a Google search. You and I are the users searching for answers, but the actual paying customer is the advertiser, like Nike or Apple. If you optimize your entire model solely for the user and completely forget the customer, well, your revenue stream dries up immediately.
Right, so once you know exactly who your customers and users are, you've got to build relationships with them. This particular block is driven by 3 main strategic goals. First up, customer acquisition. How do we get them in the door? Second, customer retention. How do we keep them coming back to prevent churn because nobody wants customers abandoning their service? And third, boosting sales. How do we increase their lifetime value through upselling or cross-selling? Literally every interaction you have with a customer should serve at least one of these 3 goals.
So we connect with these segments through channels, moving through 5 very distinct phases of the customer journey. You've got to guide them from awareness, maybe through SEO or a viral social media campaign, to evaluation, perhaps by offering a free trial. Then you facilitate the actual purchase, handle the delivery, whether that's physical or digital, and finally provide after-sales support, like warranties or a help desk. The key here, your channel has to match your product. You're not going to sell a complex, multi-million-dollar enterprise software through an automated app store, right? You need a high-touch, direct sales force for that.
Part 3, the value proposition.
Bridging the gap between the customer on the right and the business operations on the left is the value proposition. To really nail this down, think of it as a matching game. On one side, you have the customer profile. What jobs are they trying to get done? What are their pains or frustrations? What gains are they desiring? Then on the other side, your solution acts as the pain reliever, the band-aid for their headaches, and the gain creator, the magic wand delivering positive outcomes. When your pain relievers perfectly map to their actual pains, boom, you have a winning value proposition.
And this value generally falls into 2 camps. It can be quantitative, which means it's highly measurable. Think of Walmart offering everyday low prices, or software that tangibly cuts a company's energy costs by 20%. Alternatively, value can be qualitative. This is highly subjective. Think about the prestige of wearing a Rolex, or the sleek, intuitive design of an Apple product. You really have to know exactly which type of value you're optimizing for.
All right, let's shift over to the left side of the canvas and see how this builds into the factory. This represents everything happening behind the scenes to make this show possible.
Part 4, the factory behind the scenes.
If the right side of the canvas was all about delivering value, this left side is entirely about creating it.
To create value, you need key resources, and these fall into 4 buckets. Physical resources are tangible, manufacturing facilities, delivery trucks. Intellectual resources are your proprietary advantages, like patents, software code, or even just the Coca-Cola brand itself. Human resources are critical in knowledge-heavy fields. Think top-tier research scientists at a pharma company. And financial resources, well, that's the cash, credit lines, and equity you use to keep the lights on.
Now, notice the clear distinction here. While key resources are the static things you own or need, your assets, key activities are the dynamic actions you take. Resources are the noun, activities are the verb. It's the actual manufacturing process, the specific 2-week software development sprints, or the problem-solving consultations that actually put your resources to work.
But hey, no business operates in a vacuum. You're inevitably going to have gaps in your resources or activities, which is exactly why key partnerships are essential. You might partner up for optimization, like outsourcing your manufacturing to Foxconn for economies of scale, literally slashing your cost per unit by producing in massive bulk. Or you might partner to reduce risk when entering a new market. You could even engage in co-opetition. Yep, that's partnering with your direct competitors. A great example is major car manufacturers teaming up to build a joint electric vehicle charging network. It benefits all of them by driving up overall EV adoption.
Finally, we transition to the absolute foundation of the canvas, which we call the wallet. This is that critical financial counterbalance that ultimately determines if your grand, beautiful strategy is actually viable in the real world.
Part 5, the wallet, all about the financials.
This section is beautifully brutal. It pits the revenue streams coming into the business directly against the cost structures that must inevitably go out. The crucial decision on the income side is choosing between the 2 pillars of revenue. Are you going for transactional revenues? Those are one-time payments, selling a car, buying a movie ticket. It requires this constant, exhausting effort to acquire new customers. Or are you building recurring revenues? Think subscription models like Netflix or SaaS licensing fees. These focus heavily on customer retention and give you a highly predictable, much more comfortable revenue stream.
On the expense side, the math behind your operations really boils down to fixed versus variable costs. Fixed costs, like rent, salaried employees, insurance, they don't change regardless of how much you produce. They carry high financial risk because, guess what? You owe that money even if revenue drops to absolutely zero. But they enable massive scaling. Variable costs, on the other hand, scale directly with your output, things like raw materials or sales commissions. They offer lower risk and way higher flexibility, but they can definitely eat into your profit margins at high volumes.
And your resulting cost structure? That's not an accident. It is a deliberate, strategic choice that absolutely must align with your value proposition. If you're running a cost-driven model, you are ruthlessly minimizing every single penny of expenditure to offer the absolute lowest possible prices. Think Ryanair or Walmart. But if you're a value-driven model, you are intentionally taking on higher costs, maybe paying top-tier salaries, to create a premium, luxury experience. Think Rolex or high-end consulting firms. You simply cannot successfully mix a bare-bones cost structure with a luxury value proposition.
To wrap up this explainer, after mapping out your partners, your key activities, your highly specific customer segments, and exactly how you deliver value to them, you've got to look at the bottom of your canvas and ask yourself one fundamental question. Does your revenue stream reliably exceed your cost structure? Because if it doesn't, you don't have a business model. You just have a really expensive hobby. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. When you look at your own business laid out on a single page, is the value you're creating truly worth the machine you've built to deliver it?